Well, welcome to Woodturning 301, lesson number 2, or the completion of lesson number 1, however you want to look at it. What we're going to do now is take that bowl that we rough turned, dried for a number of months, and finish it. Theoretically, I put that bowl away, and I brought 2 more out of our stock to take a look at. And if you look straight on these bowls, you can already see that they've moved a lot as they've dried. The first one is pear, and can you see how the curve has moved down a little bit? This is wood that has moved this way. As it dried, it pulled itself up. So let's see the pear bowl. Let's just get a couple of measurements for fun. Diameter is 5.5 of that plane, and across the end grain it's almost 6 inches. So that means that we have done this. Also, I have a bowl here that's oak. Oak is known for moving a lot. It's also one that has been turned for almost a year. The narrow diameter is 8.5. Long diameter is 9.25. So we can see what's happened to move. How do I know that it's dry? Well, first of all, when I picked it up, it feels room temperature, which means it is not cool, not evaporating moisture, not continuing to cool down. If I had weighed this blank when I put it in storage a year ago, almost a year ago, and recorded its weight every few months and watched the weight go down, I'd be measuring the loss of water from the cellular structure. And when that moisture content goes to neutral, in other words, equilibrated with the atmosphere, then the weight will stop reducing and will be at a standard weight. If I had a moisture meter, I would test the worst part of the bowl, which means 2 pins right here into the tenon. That's not only the thickness of the bottom, but it's the thickness of the tenon, and it's overly thick. And I can read that. I have a moisture meter. It's a different kind. This one works on electronics and basically like radar. While I can measure that, I can also measure around the surface of this, even up to the rim, where if I look at that, I'm sitting at 6% moisture content. And that is just about as dry as this is going to get. Let's check the tenon, the worst place. Yeah, it's reading exactly the same thing. So that bowl's ready to turn. The pear is sitting about 12% at the tenon, which means there's still a little moisture in there. That's the thickest part. But up here on the place where it's as thin as we can get it, we are also at 6% roughly. So either one of these can be turned. Probably going to do the smaller one only because it's going to take less time making cuts that you've already seen. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up on this little spot right here. That mark was put on there when the bowl was first turned, and I know that's the dead center. And I'm going to put the chuck on the lathe. I'm going to jam the bowl over the chuck, bring the tailstock up into this place right here, and now I'm between centers, and I'll be able to bring this tenon into round. I can also read through the exterior to some extent. To some extent means that when I reverse this and put it into the chuck later, I won't get perfect registration. And because it's not perfect, there will need to be a little bit of returning there to bring it back into perfection again. This is a deep, narrow bowl, so when I make my cuts with my bowl gouge, I'll be able to go part of the way, but I'm not going to be able to get all the way down into the center with the standard bowl gouge. There are bottom feeder gouges, which we haven't talked about, and I'm not going to use one today. So I'm going to go to my standard bowl scraper to clean that up and bring this back out. So we're ready to do it. Let's go to the lathe and finish a bowl. See you in a couple minutes. Here's my little mark. Then my tailstock. Bring the bowl up. Lock it tightly in place. tool rest about in place. Power is on. Speed is very low. Let's see how she's turning. Oh yeah, that's way out of line. Well, take our bowl gouge, bring us into round. Way out, didn't it? So we got it roughly done. So now I'll take our skew chisel. I'm going to make sure this is nice and square. Mostly making sure this corner down here is nice and square. Then across the bottom a little bit. Okay, we've got a flat bottom. Square tenon, and I actually think the tenon may be just a little bit too long for this chuck, so I'm going to shorten it just a little bit. Well, that'll be fine right about there. There's a hole in the center of the chuck, so this little nub will fit right in there. Small enough to go down inside. So we're done there. So what we can now do is begin to look at doing some rough shaping on the outside. I raise my tool rest just a little bit. Go over here. Okay, so now we're going to be making a few cuts from the bottom up. Just simply take out some of that out of round. And what I'm doing is holding the tool tightly to the tool rest and not allowing it to bounce against the wood. The reason is, if it bounces against the wood, I'll begin to track the surface and not bring it back into round. So if I let it ride here and just go up and down, it would take us much longer, if at all, able to get that thing into round. But you see, by holding it here, I'm only hitting the high spots. So as we can see, it cleans up pretty nice. A little bit more towards the base, that's fine. Let's bring some more up here towards the top, and then we'll come back. Now I can tell by the sound right there, I got into solid wood. Here, still bouncing. Little tiny cuts falling way out around. So we pretty well got it, except down here at the base. It's very mild looking wood. I like it. So let's start, make another cut, and we'll finish it off after we reverse it into the four-jaw chuck. Typical cuts, I started on my right foot, ended up on my left. If I go any farther, I'll fall over, so I need to stop, move B, reposition my tool rest, and finish bringing this cut up. I'll continue to pull. Now there's bumps in there. I could worry about cleaning up now with shear cuts. Because you know it's not worth it. That's too much work because I know I have to touch it later. So let's take it out, put it in the four-jaw scroll chuck, as we talked about, with having a good looking tenon. So into the chuck, pressing against the top of the jaws, get a good seat. Tighten down. As I did before, we'll continue to use each hole until we get this nice and tight. There we go. Now, let me go back and do one more cut on the outside. This time I'm going to pull from the base up. Mainly because to push, I would have to get in a place where I can't reach. So I'm going to have to get in front of the tool to do this. Don't need much. So I'm going to try to clean this up as much as I can. A little shear cuts now. Try to get out my marks. It rises and falls. And I love these little shavings that come with this. I'm looking over the back edge and it looks like a pretty good shape. So we're going to do inside, I'm going to take the tailstock out, give myself more clearance. And maybe you a better view too. So now we have a rim that is 3/8 out. Remember, I don't want to cut into it. I'm going to cut from the side. And because this is out of round, remember we always have to keep rotating to check. So clean up the top rim first. Two reasons to do it now. One, I have to do it anyway. Number two, I want a flat surface on which to rest this tool when I make this inside cut. We get a little better light inside that bowl. I'm not sure we can or not. But anyway, here we go. So I'm only going to go down about 3/4 of an inch. I want to get this wall uniform. And I also want to make sure that I still have as much support down here as I can while I'm still turning on this thing. It's a little thicker at the bottom. That's okay. I'll catch that when I come down to the next cut, which is now starting to go inside the bowl. Pick up my cut and go a little farther. Wow, out of round. Now we'll blend these two. And let's check and see how we're doing. Oh yeah, definitely getting thicker as I go down. But this is nice wood to cut, so I'm going to start here. Open up and hold the tool at this posture while I take more off from the bottom. Getting pretty close. Light touches. So let's take our calipers. Either direction. Yeah, they work. And it's fine. Down to here. Now I'm going to come down a little farther. See if I can blend this one in. Let's see what we can see here. How's that? That works pretty good. With a standard gouge like this and a very deep narrow bowl is I can't stay on the bevels. I come down around there. I'm going to have to change to a different tool. In this case I'm going to go to my hole scraper, which we have used before. Let's see, wall thickness is pretty good. A little thick at the bottom. Center down. There it needs to be centered. Part's a little bump right in the center. What you got to do is find it, the edge of the tool, go below it, engage it, and then come across. Let's see what we've got. Feels fine. Right there, it's a little thick. I'm doing this with my fingers because it's easier than the calipers. The bottom's fine. It's just this corner right in here. Just needs to come out a little bit. Oh yeah, that's got it. That's got it. Now, I don't know if I like the rim that way or round it off, but if I'm going to come and cut on this thing again, worst thing you can do is come here with a gouge and try to cut that. Scrape it. Scrape it. I'm going to round it. I'm going to scrape it. A little shear scrape just to break that edge. If you try to put your tool on that edge, hits that end grain and comes around, you will tear a hunk out of the wood more times than not. And the inside, same way. Since we don't have any support out here for this wood, we have to make these cuts very light to keep the chatter down. The rest of it I can do with sandpaper. So we, in essence, have rough turned the bowl. Probably what we need to do now is do a little bit of sanding on it, which we will set up for. Okay, I've set up for a little bit of sanding. I've opened up my dust collection port, brought my hose right up underneath the bowl, and I'm going to use a reciprocal sander here, one of these guys with Velcro on it. It has a Velcro pad and it has a secondary pad, the purpose of which is to keep this one from breaking down. As heat generates, the little hooks on the Velcro will fail. I can throw the intermediate away, save my main unit, and then simply put another short, inexpensive pad back on. Easy to do. Dust collection. Could be noisy. Sorry about that. Speeds down a little bit. Now, turn that off so I can talk. What I have done is sand it with 80 grit. And this is rotating the opposite direction of the bowl. If I aim it the other way, it will obsolete the other direction. Now, right now I can see here in the end grain area some marks right here that do not appear in the side grain area. And that means that the end grain is harder to sand, as it always is. So I'm going to go back over that until these little lines, which are results of tool marks, disappear. So I'm going to stay with 80 grit and work that area here just a little bit more. Here we go. Still there. Get a clean 80 grit pad. I don't know if you know from my dust collection system hose whether you can see the dust going in there, but this collects a really high percentage of the dust. And I'm looking here with the bright lights and it's almost gone. And when it is, we'll go up through the grits and then go inside and do the same thing all over again. Here we go. Cleaned up good. On to 120. Okay, let's do a finer grip. Call the outside done. I like that. Let's go inside now. I'll bring my dust collector out a little farther. Go back to my 80 grit. Now the problem here is getting in and sanding there. I'm going to have to do that by hand. I know that. But most of the side, I did just like I did the outside. Rim over on the inside too. And let's see what scratches look like in there. Oh, that's good. But we haven't done the real bottom. If I had power sanding, I could probably do that with the unit, but I'm going to do it by hand. I got to get in here and move the tape across this bottom in a place where the wood is not moving very much. That's what we can do. And the bottom. You can do this all blades if you want to. I don't really spending a lot of time sanding. 20. The fine grit. And the bottom. All right, so that's the sanding portion. The inside looks pretty good. I'm going to go put some finish on this. Be right back. And before I reverse this and do the bottom, I'm going to build a couple coats of finish on. Especially given the weather it is right now, it'll dry very rapidly, and I won't have to wait a long time to finish this video. However, the finish will plug up many of the pores, stabilize them a little further, and when we chuck this up. I'm going to use a vacuum chuck at the very end. This will prevent the air from being pulled through the pores of the wood. I put a pretty healthy coat on there. And I've used up all the finish I put in my little cup here. So I'll put a little bit more in. It looks so nice when you put that first coat on. Now what's happened already, the wood on the inside has gone opaque, not shiny, which means it's soaked the finish into the fibers of the wood already. So what I want to do is to keep building this as long as it'll soak it in for a while. So I'll put 2 or 3 fairly heavy coats on. I can see the outside starting to dry in a little bit. And I want as much of this to soak into the fibers as I can. What will happen is it will begin to stabilize the grain, equilibrate with the moisture content in the air inside and out. Both sides have to be done. We also want to be able to have a nice look. Now, if you don't want it shiny, that's okay. This can be easily sanded back with 4/0 steel wool. I didn't want 2/0, that'll just create scratches. So there's a coat or 2. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to wipe the excess off. This matte look right there is not a bad look for a bowl like this. And so after 2 or 3 coats, if it's still too shiny, that 4/0 steel wool will just make it just fine. I want a 4/0 steel wool rather than sandpaper, because sandpaper scratches, steel wool cuts. So here's coat number 1, and we're going to let it go, and I will see you 2 or 3 coats later when we bring it back onto here and finish up the base. Be back in a little while. Okay, let's set up for a little vacuum chucking. I've got several sizes chucks, but this seems to be the one that's most appropriate here. Here's my bowl with just a couple of coats, but it's enough for us to finish our demonstration here. You can see that there's more sanding and finishing needs to be done here. I've saved that spot right on the bottom because that goes in here. This thing goes up over the chuck, and we've been centered. So now what I'm going to do is turn on the vacuum. I have not locked my tailstock. I want it to be able to be pulled in. A little noise from the vacuum system. Close the valve. We've got plenty of vacuum. So I don't need this anymore. We're going to take the valve off. Now, I don't want to push across because doing that is going to end up possibly displacing this a little bit. So I want to make as much cuts towards the headstock as I can in removing mass. So let's keep our speed very low. Bring it up. Now this helps a lot more finishing to be done later. But I'm going to take cuts basically pushing towards the headstock. Just removing mass. The closer I get to the center, the longer it takes me to get this done. The wood is turning around at the same RPM. But the surface going past the cutting edge is drastically slower. So the closer I get to the center, the more I have to just wait. Trying to get as much mass off as I can. Now I'm going to go across, but very light cuts. Since I'm going to dish this out a little bit, my cuts as I get towards the center will get deeper. And I'm going to have to probably take it in several steps. Too much wood. I want that cross pressure. Don't push. I want to make that last cut in one pass if possible. In order to take out any gouge marks, I have a shear scrape across here. That's pretty much it, other than a little mark of some sort. I have a tendency to do this. Three little grooves. And now a little bit of sanding. And that bowl is done. Vacuum off. Well, we completed that project. We took a green log, I should say, turned it into a bowl, allowed it to dry a period of time, and then came back and finished it inside and almost outside. We'll do that in a couple of minutes after the video's over. I'll put some finish on this. Our next lesson, lesson number 3 in this series, is going to be focused on doing the same job but absolutely backwards. Instead of turning the bowl and creating this kind of shape here, we are going to do what's called a natural edge bowl, in which case the bark edge of the piece is out, and it will have a sinuous shaped curve to it. It requires some centering and some alignment issues early on. And also with the wings standing up, they become very difficult to turn because we're turning air, and then some wood, and then some air, and then some more wood. So come back for the next video and see how we do a natural edge bowl from a half of a green wood log. See you in the next lesson.